Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, sponsored by ACR Poker. My name is Clayton Fletcher, and I am your host here in fabulous, bucolic, opulent Baltimore, Maryland. Happy to be wishing all of you a very happy holiday, whatever it is you may celebrate. And one thing that I want to say is this will be the final episode of the year 2023, so I have a lot to get to this week. I want to first thank you guys for all of the great feedback on the episodes that we did with the professional players from ACR Poker. If you go back the last few weeks, I had wonderful interviews, I thought, with Drew and Jeff and Katie, all of whom are ACR pros. We also had a very informative and interesting conversation with Mr. Matt Savage himself. So my trip to Vegas, although not profitable, was a lot of fun, and I got a lot of good content to bring to the audience known as TPE Nation. So I want to thank you guys for listening and for all of your comments. Some of you commented on Twitter at Clayton Comic, and some of you joined our Discord chat all about the podcast itself. And if you would like to join the TPE Discord, it's absolutely free. Just click the link in the description of this podcast and you can join the fun. We have a podcast section where we discuss each and every episode as it comes out. And so it's fun to hear your thoughts in real time as you listen along to the podcast. I'm actually going to have a hand later on that I played in Vegas with a podcast listener. So look forward to that later on. But first, I want to get to something I do. It's become a tradition now that I've been hosting this podcast for over 5 years. At the end of each year, I like to do a year-end wrap-up, kind of look back at the goals that I set for myself heading into 2023. And now that 2023 is coming to a close, I want to see how we did with those goals. I encourage you guys to do this as well. I like to look at my goals periodically throughout the year, in addition to at the beginning and the end. You never want to lose sight of what your goals are, so it's very important to hold yourself accountable. So I had set 5 goals for the year 2023, and the first goal was I wanted to play 80 live tournaments. That did not happen. I'm going to have to give myself a B- on this one. I ended up playing in 56 tournaments. By the way, I had 6 total cashes, including my first ever World Series of Poker final table. I had a profitable year in tournaments, but I didn't play as many as I actually wanted to. I had a very busy year in comedy. I actually ended up making more money from comedy this year than from poker. So that is kind of a double-edged sword, I suppose. And of course, I was on a bit of a book tour promoting the ROI of LOL. Now, guys, if you've already bought my book, let me just say right now, thank you, thank you, thank you. Every sale counts. It means a lot to me. And if you have read the book or bought the book or skimmed through the book, if you could kindly leave a review on Amazon. If we get to 50 reviews on Amazon, apparently that's a magic number that makes Amazon pay more attention to our book and promote it to more readers. We are currently at 36 at the time of this recording. So if you could take a moment and just look up the ROI of LOL on Amazon and leave a review. 5 stars would be great. I would really appreciate that if you guys could do that for us. Anyway, getting back on track here, another goal that I had set was 300 online tournaments. Now, this goal I absolutely shattered. I played 611. Now, with the live tournaments, I had 6 cashes in 56 events, which is a little bit below my career average of 16% cash rate. But in the online space, I cashed way more than I'm supposed to. I had 100 cashes exactly out of 611 tournaments. So just about 1 out of 6 there. We'll take that every time. So yeah, I did a little better online than I did live, which I found surprising, at least in that one metric, which is the caches. I had a lot of very small caches online. I did a lot of late regging, which typically results in, a higher cache rate, but you're not going to cache very high. It's pretty hard to win a tournament when you buy in 6 hours after it starts. It happens, but it's pretty uncommon. I think I'm going to do less of that next year, but we'll get to my goals for next year on next week's podcast episode. Another goal that I had set myself was 200 study hours, and this one, bullseye. I spent exactly 200 hours studying poker this year. I read some books, I did some work watching videos, but mostly what I did was really get deep into game theory using GTO Wizard. I really love this tool. I know you guys have heard me talking about it for the last several weeks. I cannot emphasize enough how easy it is to use. Other solvers take a little while. They have what I would call a pretty flat learning curve, especially in the beginning. It's very difficult for me anyway to get the hang of some of the other products out there. GTO Wizard, within minutes, I was getting in there, I was plugging in my hands, I was practicing spots, I was uploading hands I had played on ACR Poker for the AI to analyze, and all without very much difficulty or user error, which for me is really saying something, guys, because I have trouble sending an email. I am whatever the opposite of a techie is. I'm kind of a fish at these things, but GTO Wizard is a wonderful program. You can train, you can practice spots, you can study spots. It's really a great product. If you want to get started using GTO Wizard, just click the link in the description of this episode, and when you do purchase, you'll save 10% because you used our what we call affiliate link. I'm a big fan of GTO Wizard. It's really improving my game, and I know it can improve yours too. So I spent 200 hours studying this year. I also had set a goal to play 300 hours of live cash games. I missed this goal by 94 hours. I played 206 hours of live cash and showed a profit across the board, except oddly in 2-5. I lost in 2-5. I won in 5-5. I won in 5-10. I won in 10-20. I won in all forms of PLO. But for whatever reason, this year, in 63 hours of 2-5 no limit hold'em, I lost almost $1,000. Everywhere else, I was profitable, so I had a good solid winning year in cash games, but for some reason, I just didn't run especially well in 2-5. And finally, I had set a goal at the beginning of 23 to record a minimum of 48 podcast episodes for you, the TPE Nation. And I'm proud to say you are currently listening to episode number 50. So that was one of my most important goals. I have tried very hard to make this a practice, almost like a religion. I do the podcast every week, just like some people go to church every week. I sit down and record an episode every week. I don't try to do them well in advance, of course. Although if you listen to last week's episode with Katie Lindsay, you probably noticed that one was recorded in advance of the main event for the World Poker Tour Championship. And Katie and I were pretty cocky at that point, saying that we felt there was no chance that they would miss the $40 million guarantee. We based that on the fact that they had shattered every other guarantee throughout the series to the tune of 100% above what they guaranteed. So like the Prime, for example, they guaranteed $5 million and hit $10 million. So we were thinking, well, we didn't think they would hit $80 million in the WPT Championship, but things do happen, and they came off about $2 million short, and that's okay. Don't worry about the win, and don't worry about the WPT. If anyone can afford it, it's them. So anyway, that's kind of what we do. We try to make a new episode for you guys each and every week, no matter what else is going on, how hectic my life gets, how hectic my book tour, my comedy career, and anything else I have going on. I make time for this the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. So we do that for you. We want you to keep listening. We want you to know that you can count on us to be here with you pretty much each and every Friday. It looks like I may have missed one or two this year, but still ended up hitting my goal of 48 and beating it by 2. Next week, we'll be looking at my goals for next year. Spoiler alert, they're not too different from my goals for this year. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. We know we had the summer of Clayton. I also had a very good year in poker generally throughout 2023, and I hope that you did too. All right, let's get into some strategy, guys. I did just come home from 2 weeks in Vegas. I played quite a few tournaments. I was busy. I tried so many times that milestone satellite. I think it's a great format. It makes it a lot more exciting, especially towards the end when the average stack is closer to the milestone, where there's less incentive for you to try to fold your way to a seat, where you might just want to say, hey, maybe if I can double up here, I'll have my seat and then I can go home and not have to sit here till 2 a.m. and argue with everybody if they all want to put in $200 and do some kind of weird chop or whatever, which seems to happen in every annoying traditional satellite that I've ever played in the live world. But yeah, I had some bad luck at the end. I got really close to a seat a few times, got into a couple of spots where I had a 70 or 80% chance of getting my seat if I could just win the pot, and then the cards ran out bad for me, and that happens. I'm not crying about it. As a result, though, I had a certain budget set. The way I like to do it is, most of my bankroll goes to my summer. I love to kind of get in there. I spend the whole summer, the full 7 weeks grinding. So I try to be really cautious with my bankroll, not go over it. And especially this tournament series coming right before the holidays, I didn't want anything to affect my ability to treat my family well at Christmas time. So I set a pretty conservative budget for the whole trip of $10,000. So what that meant was I was either going to have a big score in one of the prelims, or I was going to have to satellite into the main event. I told myself before I even got on the plane, Clayton, you're not going to spend more than $10,000 in Vegas. So that was my portion of my overall bankroll that was allocated to this trip. And I'm very proud of the fact that I didn't go over that amount. I decided to stay within my allocated bankroll. Even when I saw the WPT Championship was going to have an overlay, I didn't know it would be a $2 million overlay, but I just felt like it was time for me to be smart with my money. I tried several satellites. I did not get in, and I didn't buy in either. So for the second time in a row, I ended up not playing that particular 10K, and I'm very happy with my decision. And that I was able to not get caught up in the excitement of the event and go against my original game plan. I feel like it's like scuba diving. You plan your dive and you dive your plan, or else you might drown. So I didn't want to drown. I was careful, and I ended up foregoing the main event. At one point, I thought about selling action, but then I pictured making the final table and winning $5.5 million or something and having to share that with all my backers. And I'm too greedy for that stuff, guys. I couldn't do it. I decided to just stay within my means, and the trip hadn't been going particularly well, and I didn't want to lose another 10K. So instead, I played in a tournament at the Venetian, of all places. They had something they called the Epic Bounty. Now, I'm telling you, these poker companies, these casino brands, are going to have to start making up new words, because we've got everything from the monster stack to the almighty stack to this bounty, to that bounty, the ultimate bounty, the epic bounty, the mystery bounty. We're going to run out of adjectives to describe bounties. But at this point, I played in the $800 epic bounty. And the guarantee for this one was, I think, $40,000, which isn't very much. Basically it's 50 players. But they end up getting almost 300 players for this thing, which I think shows you what an inexact science trying to predict a field size in a poker tournament is. And it's constantly evolving. Are people going to want to stay at the Wynn? Are they going to play cash games at the Wynn instead of going next door to the Venetian? Are they going to hear that everything got resolved at MGM and go down there and try to get into some of those overlays. Like, you just don't know. So I really don't blame the poker staff at the Venetian for trying to be conservative so that they wouldn't have to pay an overlay. We know how cheap they are about things like that. By the way, when you play cash games at the Venetian, if you play small stakes, you only get $1 an hour, which is like, why bother swiping a card? What are you going to do at the Venetian for $1? But I digress. Let me tell you about the Epic Bounty Tournament. So the way this one works, it's an $800 buy-in. And for the first many levels, until we actually get into the money, the bounties are worth $200. So for every player you knock out of the tournament, you receive a bounty of $200. But if you bust someone after the money, you get $1,000. So this is just a new and creative way to redistribute the funds in the prize pool, right? Some amount of the buy-in goes to the main prize pool and some other amount goes to the bounty prize pool. Now, in the case of a mystery bounty, you don't have any bounty prizes until you're in the money on day 2. But in this case, you actually collect that $200 even if you bust somebody out right at the beginning of the tournament while registration is still open. So I was happy to be able to buy in right when the tournament started, and I was absolutely killing it. At the first hand I want to talk about, the blinds were 1K and 2K, and at this point registration had almost closed. The average stack, according to the screen, the Bravo screen, was 55,000. Well, we had 120,000 in the stack, which is such a great place to be in. When you're in a bounty tournament, you know if you have a close decision, you can give action and try to collect some of that bounty prize pool for yourself. So that's a great spot. And we also were at a pretty good table with a lot of loose and not so gifted, talented players on our right. So that was, these two facts are related. If you're at a good seat at a good table and you're not getting terrible cards, you should be accumulating chips with relative ease. So in this hand, the action folds to the low jack, who is a very loose aggressive but not skillful player who's got a stack of about 60K, and he raises to 4,000. On his immediate left in the hijack was a very bad, very fishy, very loose kind of calling station type of player with a thick Spanish accent, maybe Cuban. I'm not really sure where he was from, but it's not an accent that I hear very often. Some type of Spanish speaking accent. Anyway, older guy, like probably close to 50 years old. And he calls with a stack of 67,000. Now, I am next to act in the cutoff, and this has already happened one other time where the same player had opened about an hour ago and this other player had called in these same exact positions. I remember I was in the cutoff and I put in a smallish, medium-ish 3-bet and took it down. So I was hoping that would happen again as I 3-bet this time with the ace of diamonds, 7 of diamonds from the cutoff. So I got aggressive here. I made it 13,000, which isn't a particularly large sizing considering the blinds and antes, and now that there's already a raise and a call in there. But this is about the percentage of the pot that I put in earlier and actually took it down. I don't really mind getting action from one or both of these opponents anyway, because I'm in position with a suited ace, which might even be the best hand. But importantly, my skill edge over these two particular opponents is such that it's very unlikely I'll end up getting outplayed by either one of them post-flop. So getting called is not exactly a disaster. So the first player had 59 to start. The next player had 67 to start. I make it 13, and now they both call. So there's now 44,000 in the middle before the flop, and my opponents both have under 65 in their remaining stacks. So we're going to see a flop, and it comes 8 of clubs, 7 of clubs, 4 of spades. 8, 7, 4 with 2 clubs. Hero holding the ace of diamonds, 7 of diamonds for middle pair. And now the first 2 players check to the razor, and I have a decision to make already in this multi-way pot. Would you like to bet your pair of sevens or check behind? I feel like this is probably a mix in a perfect GTO world, but the reason I decided not to bet was, again, I'm not particularly worried about getting outplayed. I have a pretty good read on both of these guys. I'm not sure that I want to get all in on a flop that is so wet and their stacks are so short that I feel like there's going to be a lot of check shoving on this particular flop. So I don't want to have to deal with having second pair on such a draw heavy board and possibly get outplayed. So it seems to me that I can control the pot and just kind of feel things out on the turn. So I decided to check behind. I do see the value in betting. You protect your hand. You don't give those draws a free card to beat you and all that. But I decided to check behind. So controversial, perhaps. Let me know what you think, either on Twitter or on in the Discord. And now the turn comes the 10 of spades. So the flop checked through, and now we've got a 10 of spades on the turn. So our board is now 8 of clubs, 7 of clubs, 4 of spades, 10 of spades, and the original raiser checks again. The Spanish-speaking fellow bets 20,000 into the 44,000 pot, and the action is on hero Clayton with what is now third pair. I'm sure many of you are just screaming at your devices right now. What's the decision, Clayton? Of course you want to fold. You don't want to have to face another bet on the river. Of course a pair of sevens could be good and all that. There's also another player yet to act. But let's be clear, guys. This original raiser, he's not going to check twice with a hand like pocket queens or pocket jacks or pocket aces. I don't think he'll ever be checking twice, even on this scary board. He's the type that would certainly bet an overpair. And of course, if he hit the 10, he would bet again. If he had anything at all, he would bet again. He's sitting there with something like king, queen. He's got no pair, no draw, and he's basically checking out of the hand. But this other player, the Spanish-speaking fellow, he can have full range. I mean, he could have a straight, he could have a set, he could have two pair, he could have a lot of things. So it's really about the read. And so I'm sitting there and I'm staring at him. I noticed he had put the chips in rather aggressively. I feel like he really wants me to fold. And sometimes this is where the live reads can be dangerous. I've lost a lot of chips with bad reads in my career. But in this case, I felt pretty confident that he wanted me to fold. And so when you combine that with the fact that there are so many draws available, any two clubs, any two spades, any 9, 9X has an open-ender. There are just so many draws available on this board that I wasn't ready to fold yet. I decided to call and hope for a clean river card followed by a check give up on the part of my opponent. And at that point, guys, I would just check behind and hope the pair of sevens would be the best hand. That's the only move there. There's no value to be gotten from betting third pair, I don't think. Anyway, I did make the call, and then as expected, the original raiser folded. So now we've got 84K in the middle, and my opponent only has another 43,000 in his stack. And the river came the king of diamonds, which is an absolute brick for the final board of 8 of clubs, 7 of clubs, 4 of spades, 10 of spades, king of diamonds. And we've just still got the lowly fourth pair, what is now fourth pair on this board. And opponent shoves for his remaining 43,000 in chips. What should I do? I mean, I just try to feel him out. I really felt like he was trying to look strong. With amateur opponents, strong means weak and weak means strong is a general rule that you can follow. So if somebody really wanted me to call, why would he be trying to look so tough? Like, why is he staring at me? Why is he flexing his muscles? You can't really rely on that if you're playing against a really, really good player or a really strong physically player like Alex Foxen. He might seem like he's flexing his muscles even when he isn't. But, just sitting there looking at the guy, I decided, you know what? I haven't made a hero call in a long time. I'm going to trust my read on this spot and just make the call with the added incentive. If I'm right, I can win that sweet $200 bounty, which helps a lot. So yeah, if you're in a close decision in a bounty tournament, it's usually correct to give action. Don't take that too far, guys. Remember, I did say if it's a close decision. And this decision actually wasn't that close for me. I just felt like with so many draws and the way that he was behaving, it just felt like he was trying to buy the pot. So I looked him up, getting almost 3-1. I only need to be correct about 25% of the time to show a profit. So I put the money in, and then my opponent said the magic words you always love to hear, good call. Of course, he was all in, so the dealer made him turn over his hand, and it was the ace of spades, 9 of spades. So the turn gave him not only an open-ended straight draw with an overcard, he also had a flush draw working. So I really don't mind his play. The problem is he's not really deep enough to go all crazy like this. I mean, I think in his spot, it's probably better to just 3-bet pre-flop or fold with his stack, given stacks. You know, there's 5K in the middle. He starts with 67,000. The original raiser started with 59,000. So, yeah, I feel like this is a spot for a 3-bet in his shoes pre-flop. Or you could just fold. You know, you don't have to play ace-9 suited from the hijack position if you don't want to. But yeah, I don't like his flatting there and then just flatting my 3-bet. Like, what are we doing here? We're getting so many of our chips in, we don't know where we stand. And then we end up picking up all kinds of equity here on the turn, which really made him want to get a little too involved in the hand, which I ended up busting him out of the tournament and collecting the $200 bounty in the process. All right, so let's get to one other hand from this same tournament. At this point, we were already in the money, and I got a chance to play against a podcast listener. His name is Ryan Honig. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name, but he's on Twitter at Ryan Honig1. I never knew Ryan prior to playing with him in this tournament, but immediately when he sat down at my table, I was unhappy. He sat right on my left. He had a ton of chips. I had over 100 big blinds at that point. We were in the money, but just barely, and it was almost break time. And so I think that I had like 500,000 in my stack, and Ryan had about 400,000 in his stack, and the blinds were something like 2,500 and 5,000. So yeah, that sounds right. He had maybe a little more than 400,000. We were very close in chips, and the average at this point, guys, was like 200,000. So Ryan and I had all the chips at our table. We had plenty of really short stacks at the table, and he struck me right away, not only as having a lot of chips, but also just kind of his general look and demeanor. It was not someone that I really wanted to come sit at my table, which I was enjoying so much. I had already collected, I think, 8 bounties before we got into the money, and now I was working on trying to get 1 or 2 of the in the money bounties, which again were $1,000 each rather than 200. So yeah, he was not welcome, but there he was sitting on my immediate left. So Ryan raises under the gun. I believe he made it 10,000. He had something like 400 and maybe 450 in his stack, and the action folds all the way back to me as they're saying this is the last hand before break, and you start to see players leaving their respective tables to go have a cigarette or go to the bathroom, whatever the case may be. And I'm in the big blind holding the Jack of Diamonds, 5 of Diamonds. Now, this is not a great hand, of course, but it only cost me another 5K to get in there. There's already 22,500 in the middle at this point, so I'm getting more than 4-1 on a call, and I have a suited jack. All right, so I'm not looking to like flop a 5 and lose a whole bunch of chips, but you know, maybe I'll flop a flush or something else really good. We shall see. I don't know Ryan well, but he strikes me as a competent player. I'm putting him on a fairly tight under the gun range, so I can pretty much get away from just about anything, including top pair. Like if it comes jack high and he puts a lot of chips in, I'll eventually find the fold, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, the flop is a great one for me. It comes Jack 5 deuce rainbow including the deuce of diamonds. So now I have top 2 pair and a backdoor flush draw, which is one of the best flops in the whole world for Jack 5 of diamonds. I check and Ryan bets 10,000 into the 22,500 pot. I'm not going to slow play this hand. I won't have a lot of check raise bluffs is the problem. Maybe if I had some kind of like ace 3 with the ace of diamonds, 4-3 for an open ender, but I don't really have that many bluffs. But I decided to be greedy and hope that Ryan would have an overpair and have trouble folding it. So I check raised to 40,000. So he bet 10, I made it 40, and now he makes the call. Okay, so now this pot is getting really big. All right, we've got about 100,000 in the middle, and he's only got about another 300,000 or so behind. So, I'm trying to get him pot committed here. The turn comes the tray of hearts. So our board is now Jack 5, deuce, tray. And I did something very unorthodox, guys. I just moved all in. I decided to go for the bounty right here and now. I was hoping that he would say maybe I have a jack or a draw. Certainly could have 4-3. This would actually be a really good way for me to play a hand like 4-3 with plenty of equity, an open ender, and try to get him to fold a hand like pocket aces. But in this case, I was trying to represent that hand because I can actually beat that hand, and I'm hoping that he would call with pocket aces. He struck me as a smart, thinking player and one that would apply logic and reasoning and not just emotion to making this very big decision now for all of a sudden, his tournament life. Now, when he showed up at my table just a few minutes ago, he was thinking, I'm doing great. I've got like 2 times an average stack here. I've got 90 big blinds. I'm loving life. He wasn't really thinking about being all in, right? So at this point, everybody else has gone on their break, and Ryan and I are just sitting there at the table, and he's really in the tank, for over a minute. He's trying to figure it out. And then he started speaking to me, which I really don't blame him. He's trying to get a read. And when you're really in the grinder, like you're trying to figure out what the heck you're supposed to do, sometimes you can gain information by talking to your opponents. Maybe something I say might not make sense, but maybe just reading my body language. How comfortable am I? Do I want him to fold? Do I want him to call? And to me, this is what's fun about playing live poker. You've got your opponent is right there in the flesh. It's not a robot. It's not RTA. It's Clayton. And so he says to me, I know you're capable of doing this without it. So I didn't really know at the time what he meant by that. I kind of chuckled and said, what are you talking about? You just got here 5 minutes ago. How do you know what I'm capable of? He's like, no, I don't mean in this tournament. I've seen you play before on TV. So now with that information, I know that he's probably seen some of the hands that they show a lot on ESPN or Poker Go, where I have overplayed top pair in spots where I have my reasons for doing so, and my longtime podcast listeners know what those reasons are. And I kind of did some things that I got away with in the main event in 2018 in particular, where I would just have top pair and I would kind of check raise, shove all in, go crazy with it and get somebody to fold top pair with a better kicker in a couple of spots where I got them to lay down better hands. So he knows that I am aggressive, and when somebody tells me they've seen me play on TV, I assume that's what they're referring to. I have played on a few other things, but obviously there's no bigger stage than the main event, and I did get a lot of coverage in that year. So with that information, I started thinking, how can I maybe confuse him into doing what I want him to do, which right now is for sure call. He told me I have a big hand. I think he even said I have pocket kings. And he was trying to get a read on me, like whether I wanted him to lay down those kings or call with them. So I just said, oh, okay, you saw me on TV. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll show you either way. And he goes, really? I said, yeah, if you fold face up, I'll show you. So you'll see what I had, whether you call or not. So I just kind of said it like that, hoping that he would interpret that table talk to mean that I wanted him to fold, and I'm trying to incentivize him folding. Now, what Ryan probably doesn't know, and what maybe some of you might not even believe, is that I will sometimes say these same words when I do want you to fold as I would say when I don't. So it's just meant to confuse and entice and arouse his curiosity. I mean, of course, sometimes I'm going to have like 4-3 or maybe an overplayed ace-jack, although I don't know if I would put that many chips in against the other chip leader with just ace-jack. And I don't think that there are any other hands that kings can beat that I would play this way. Maybe pocket queens, but I think even against an under-the-gun raise, I'm usually going to be 3-betting pre-flop rather than calling and seeing the flop with that hand. So, yeah, the problem for pocket kings is they really can't beat anything but 4-3 or some other draw that I can't even think of right now. So, yeah, it's a tough spot for him. I was just hoping that my table talk would do the trick, and sure enough, he made the call with pocket kings, and even now I'm not in the clear. He can catch a king or a deuce or a tray on the river, and then that would actually be a better 2-pair than what I've got. So he's still got many outs. It's not over yet, but the river was like a beautiful ace of hearts or whatever, and I ended up winning this massive pot with Jackson 5. Yeah, Motown, baby. Michael and Tito and all them. So, yeah, I was really happy with that hand. I liked the psychological elements of it. I kind of feel bad for Ryan, being a new player at the table, only having seen me played on TV. I don't really know what he's supposed to do with pocket kings in that situation. It's such a ridiculous overbet on the turn that I don't know what can be expected in villain's shoes. So I end up collecting the $1,000 bounty for busting Ryan, and I got one more $1,000 bounty for a total of 10 bounties in the tournament, 2 of them after the money, and finished in, I think, 17th place in the tournament. So I end up winning a total of about $5,000, which is not bad for an $800 buy-in. All hell broke loose. I had 950,000 when the average was 250,000. So after this big pot versus Ryan, I was the overwhelming chip leader in the tournament. But as we all know, sometimes all hell breaks loose, and I got into a similar situation that Ryan had been in. I had pocket queens on a 9-high flop, and my opponent went crazy and put all the chips in for like half my stack, and I ended up calling. I was good. He just had top pair with a mediocre kicker, but he paired that mediocre kicker on the river, which brought my stack back down to average. And then from there, I suppose finishing about 17th is just about an average outcome for someone who had an average stack with 30 players left in the tournament. So yeah, as much as I would have liked to have collected the $20,000 first place prize, in addition to all of the bounties, it was still a really fun event, and I like the format. You guys know how much I love all kinds of wild bounty formats, and this one is super fun. I like how you get a little something for busting people. You don't actually have to make day 2, or this is a one-day tournament, so you don't just have to get into the money to get paid. It's nice. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Terminator series that they used to run in the Aussie Millions, except that the bounties there did not go up after the money was reached. So that'll do it for this episode and for this year, 2023, here on the TPE podcast. I just want to say before I go, I appreciate all of you who have taken the time to download and listen to all of these episodes. Many of you in our Discord talking about old episodes from when I first started hosting the podcast back in 2018. And I just want to let you guys know how much you mean to me and how grateful I am for all of your support. Please rate, review, subscribe, do all that stuff that all the podcast hosts around the world always ask you to do. And also, guys, if you haven't yet joined ACR Poker, I've got a deal for you. Click the link in the description of this podcast, and you can receive a 100% first-time deposit bonus up to $2,000 just by using the promo code TPE. And so for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, with special thanks as always to our very generous sponsor, ACR Poker, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Happy New Year, and thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas Plays. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Log in intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I wanna roll with her, a hard pair we will be. While little gambling is fun when you're with me. I love it. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, it's not rough, it isn't fun. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody.